Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
May we pray. God, thank you for this day, and we thank you for all the residents and everyone that's gathered together to do your business. God, we pray that we always do things that are pleasing to you. We do them decent and in order for the business of the city of Lynn Haven. I pray for the residents, for the staff, for the commission, God, that you move, and God, that you keep us in your care. We pray for this county and this United States, that we come together, and God, that we show the love and unity that I know you created in all of us. These many blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The mayor's report this morning, I just wanted to call your attention to this coming Saturday, the 27th. Carol Ladesseur and the group of Compassionate Friends of Bay County will be dedicating that beautiful memorial garden that they have built on property that the commission approved at Kensaw Park. If you haven't been down there to see that garden, it is absolutely beautiful, complete with a fountain, an angel, and a place for people who have lost children to visit and to reflect. And what's really wonderful about it is right next to the playground and their children playing, and it's just a very beautiful place. So that'll be this Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. If you'd like to attend, it's going to be a really great day. I would also ask that you keep the Albritton family in your thoughts and prayers. I'm very sad to say that Adam has lost his father this week, and their family is of course mourning that, but our community as well. Judge Albritton was a well-known figure in this community, and he will be sorely missed by all of us. So. That really completes my mayor's report. I've spent the week with some medical tests and all, and I know you all know how invigorating and wonderful that is. So that's about the end of the mayor's report for today, and I'll move on to Commissioner Tender for the commissioner's report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The past couple of weeks, I've been just dealing with some residential issues, and of course, we had the open forum for the folks from Mowat Highlands and what's the name of that subdivision? Andrews Plantation. Anyway, it was very good. It was very successful. There were a lot of people there, and I appreciated all the good input that they gave the commission. Also, I've already talked to Bobby about one issue I have on the sidewalk, and they're just miscellaneous things. And while I was at the code enforcement hearing last week, I had a resident come to me in regards to the dog park at Kensaw. She lives directly behind the dog park. And the noise and the lights shining in her bedroom window and all of these things are just getting worse and worse. And she's not the only one. There's 4 homes there. Anyway, I told her I would bring it up for the commission's consideration to possibly keep the dogs away at 5 a.m. and bring them in at 7 or whatever, create some kind of hours so that those people there can get some peace and quiet. So with that said, I would like to be on the agenda next time so that we could discuss it, if that's possible. And I think that's just about everything that I have for this week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tender. Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a fairly busy couple of weeks between our workshops and working with the county over the issues on 389. Most of my comments will be related to items 13, 14, and 15 on the agenda, so I'll save my comments to then, other than let you know that I'm busy and working the best I can for the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Aldridge?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo the sentiment. It's been a busy couple weeks. We've done a lot of workshops. We've all been together every other day for the last couple weeks. And so with that being said, I think everything's pretty transparent with what I've been up to. So I have no report at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perno?
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I'd like to call on Mrs. Gaynor for the city manager's report.
Mayor, yes, just a couple of comments. First, with the dog park, we do have hours in place. It's from sunrise to sunset, and it coincides with Kinsale Park. There are no lights there as we currently speak, but we surely can look at other ways to minimize the noise if Commissioner Tender will allow me to do that and see what we can do there. So I just wanted to comment there.
So, would you want to let the staff look at it and see what they could do, or would you still prefer to have that on the next agenda? What would your preference be, Commissioner?
Sorry. I'd just like to see us take some action to see how feasible it is.
So-
Doing something like you and I had talked about, a fence, or it doesn't have to be anything great, but I guess there are a lot of people down there after dark driving around that area, and the dogs are being brought in at the crack of dawn, I guess, really early, so it just doesn't seem fair to those.
So would you feel that to just direct staff to make some corrections
Sure.
to it, would that be sufficient at this time?
Yep, that would
Okay,
be great.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of the other things, the splash pad is open. Both of them are open, and the staff have done a very good job of making sure that everyone is following guidelines. Had a very successful day yesterday, one incident, but all is well. It's been a pretty busy week for us. We have received the $5 million that we talked about. We can actually draw that down at any time for the community disaster loan. We also received some other money from FEMA, a little bit over $149,000, but we anticipate some other reimbursements to be coming in real soon. Just to give you an update on the insurance dispute, very promising in terms of where we're working with Merlin Law to get to a point that we can receive the rest of our insurance money, and I think that's a really great thing. We are excited about Ascension Sacred Heart coming into the city of Lynn Haven. They bought up some property on 77. We'll be meeting with them this week and hopefully planning some type of groundbreaking ceremony in the next couple of weeks. The next thing I have on my report is the Employee of the Month. The Employee of the Month is Eugenia Sestisco. Eugenia came to us almost 2 years ago, and she has been working in several areas where most of our seniors know her. She works with the Senior Center, has done a great job of developing those relationships, keeping the seniors active, working with them. They love her, and we just want to commend her because after the storm, many of us had to go to different positions, do other jobs, and she's done a very good job of staying focused and working in areas that were probably not normally her task. So that is Employee of the Month, and I just wanted to recognize her for Employee of the Month. And Mayor, that is my report.
Thank you. Mr. Albritton, do you have a report this morning?
Mayor, no report this morning.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for public commentary. Any member of the public may comment on any topic that you'd like to bring before the commission. If you would please direct any comments to the commission directly to me, and then we can allow them answer questions if they'd like to. And also want to remind you that the way this meeting is conducted, there will be an opportunity to make a comment on any item during the meeting as we discuss it. So at this time, I open the floor to public commentary. Yes, sir.
James Finch, 410 East 2nd Street, Lynn Haven. I got a check I would like to present to y'all for the 4th of July fireworks in the amount of $20,000.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Thank you. For those who might be listening at home who could not hear that, that was Mr. James Finch with Phoenix Construction, who just presented the city with $20,000 to pay for the fireworks celebration. So we appreciate that so much, and would also like to mention that this has been going on at least 40 years that he's been doing this. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Any other commentary? Mrs. Walker?
Thank you.
Janet Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue.
Could you
Is
just
there
tilt
some
it down a
reason-
little bit, Mrs. Walker? Thank you. All you do is just
You can
tilt it.
pull it off.
Or you can take it off the stand, whichever you prefer.
Is there some reason why there's no public hearing mentioned today on the agenda for items 10 and 11?
I'll have to look at the items, Mrs. Walker. Discussion and possible approval of the resolution for the comprehensive plan and discussion and possible approval of resolution regarding the FDEP State Revolving Fund. I would defer to the attorney because I don't know the answer to your question. Mr. Albritton, could you help us with that?
10 is a public hearing, it's just not, yeah. Yeah, it's just because the agenda itself doesn't list the public hearing, that is not in itself a defect, or a fatal flaw. What would be is if you didn't advertise it properly, and my understanding is, from Amanda, is that it was advertised as a public, hearing.
Correct. Both of them were advertised as a public hearing.
Yes, and
And
just,
so there's nothing stated like we usually have start time and finish time for a public hearing?
You can't have a
we,
finish time.
we can't have a start time in advance. We will conduct it as a public hearing, but just because your agenda doesn't say public hearing next to it is not a fatal defect.
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Walker. Are there any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Yvonne Bishop, 1225 Dundee Lane, and I'd like to thank you all for having the workshop last week. It really helped us to feel like we were heard, and we appreciate that. There's a few things. The capital improvement on item 10, I noticed that one of the items was the Dundee Lane drainage and I was wondering if that was what you guys were talking about, the culvert replacement that will possibly happen to help the drainage at Mowat.
And
And-
I'm looking behind you, and I see our engineer, Chris Forehand, nodding his head yes.
Okay,
So,
well,
to that question.
part of, then I also saw 24th Street was in there, and the years on it is what I guess I have a little issue with because, you know, the Dundee Lane is 2022, which could be a year and a half to 2 years, and the other one was 2024. And then also, I guess my thing is, being that we have an issue with drainage going across and the development going in, if they have their retention ponds and stuff, is great, and it will stop flooding on their property, which their reports say it just affects, but any upland water that would be coming possibly onto their property won't be able to come. It'll be done through the creek and stuff, which has an issue. So I guess I would ask that when this comes up for a vote, you know, that it's a legitimate reason, I think, to deny the development until those capital improvements can be made. My other thing, I don't know if the item about the wastewater, if that has to do with something else or the lift station behind the properties right there, because I also think the lift station should be upgraded before you put in more. So that's just my comment on those two. The item about the possible back entrance, is that misspoken because you have it 24th Street to 26th Street, which are apart this way, rather than 24th Street east to 24th Street west, which is by the post office and would be straight.
I would like if Mr. Forehand, would you have any objection to coming to the podium and I'll, if you'll let him have was that the end of your question, ma'am, or did you have another one?
Well, I just.
You can stay there. That's fine. That's fine if you have another one.
The only other thing is a totally different issue.
Okay.
That Mowat Highlands brick entrance, the brick was damaged by Hurricane Michael, and I don't know, I tried to call the property appraisers, and they said the city of Lynn Haven. We don't know who's responsible for fixing it. One of the neighbors was, and I just wondered if you guys could look into that of who
Absolutely.
the property.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Forehand, hopefully to answer your questions in a more eloquent way, because he knows more about engineering and culverts than I do. Okay?
Okay.
Go ahead,
thank
sir.
you. I'm Chris Forehand with Panhandle Engineering, and I think I
Could you
remember
raise
all-
the microphone a little bit, Chris? Just thank
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I think I remember most of her comments and questions. One had to do with the crossing at Dundee and the crossing at 24th Street. That was included as a recommendation to increase the size of those pipes as part of the Stormwater Master Plan. We did apply for HMGP funding, and we should find out sometime this year if we
Okay.
get that funding. I would assume shortly thereafter, the city commission would probably move forward with those projects if they're funded. So I think that may come a little quicker than the time frame that's listed in the capital improvements plan.
Okay. That's good news.
One of our questions were about the stormwater. I think we answered most of those in the workshop we had the other night.
Okay.
We basically designed the pond to a 100-year storm. But I don't think they're going to have any issues, even though we are increasing those pipe sizes.
Okay.
We're basically just trying to keep specifically on Dundee, we're trying to keep the water from crossing over the road.
Okay,
There's no structural flooding that we know of in that area, so.
thank you.
What were some of her other questions?
Upgrading of lift station.
The lift station is being upgraded as part of the Landon's Landing townhomes, so that'll be taken care of. Any others?
I think that was pretty much.
24th
that was
Street.
it. She had the 24th and 26th.
The connection, which you have that on the
connection.
agenda, the connection between 24th, we had looked at connecting 24th straight to Minnesota, but there's a conservation easement there that we cannot cross. That is a state and federal conservation easement. So we looked at the potential to use the railroad track that the city now owns to connect 24th to 26, which would actually dump wouldn't dump anybody out on 389. You could take that route to go to the west.
Okay,
So.
all right, thank you so much. I hope that clarified some of your questions. Mr. Finch?
James Finch, 410 East Second Street, Lynn Haven. On the lift station itself, I'm the one doing the apartments there on 390, Landon's Landing.
Right,
I have with me a contract performance bond for the lift station. In the lift station, I was the first one to get finished with the project, so the city required me to build a lift station that upgrades for everything, which is $211,000. I have the contract, the performance, and the payment bonds to present to the city where I can get the building permits for Landon's Landing. However, if y'all decide not to do the other project, then we will need to reduce the size of the lift station and reduce the paperwork here. But I have a performance and payment bond to complete the lift stations for both projects and some future use in the amount of $211,000. And I'd like to present that to.
thank you, Mrs. Gaynor. Thank you so much. Ma'am, I'll allow one more question.
Just
Come on,
one
if you'll
more.
come to the podium, please.
I was just wondering, is that the lift station behind 23, or is it going to be placed somewhere else? It is that one, okay. We're just the closest houses to
Sure.
it, so if it failed for some reason, I think we would be flooded first. So,
Okay.
thank you.
You're very welcome, ma'am. Is there anyone else who'd like to? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Thank you. My name's Carrie Fioramonte, and I live at 1207 Georgia Avenue. I also wanted to preface what I was going to say to y'all to let you know that I am a professor at Gulf Coast State College, and I teach biology. The reason I came to the meeting today is because I've reached out to quite a few of our local officials via email to express my concern about the really the non-wearing of face coverings in public spaces. And I did want to offer to you some of the peer-reviewed scientific literature that is available to us. My own president at Gulf Coast State College is requiring mask usage while on campus. And as he said, because he feels as though the scientific literature warrants it, and the evidence is overwhelming. And so I don't want to take a bunch of time reading like these scientific papers to you guys. They all have abstracts, and they all have a slightly different perspective. It could be on coronaviruses. It could, in general, it could be on effective handling of pandemics, and then it could just be commentary talking about something that actually our city manager mentioned, solidarity and unity. I'm not really sure why the wearing of face masks is becoming politicized, or maybe people are thinking in terms of economics more than public health. I actually am of the opinion, and this is my opinion, that we do need to reopen our economy. We have to get back to business. I'm even wondering, am I going to be able to teach through this face mask at school? Am I even going to get to be in the classroom? I don't know. But either way, I think that we will have a safer and more successful reopening if we require our citizens to do as much as they can. That would include, obviously, physical distancing, reducing the amount of time that they spend outside of the home, and wearing face masks. I don't have to tell you guys because we get daily updates for positive cases, deaths, hospitalizations. Our hospitalizations have increased by 40% in the past 10 days. And while I have been, again, I have had 2 people reach back to me from the Bay County Health Department, as well as Philip Griffiths, assuring me that our hospitals are on standby and ready. I just would implore our local governments to prevent the surge, not try to handle it. And so that's really what I would like to say. Thank you for.
I appreciate
Thank you for
your
letting me
comments,
comment.
ma'am. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name's Brian Dick, 3217 Country Club Drive. Chief Ramey, first I'd like to applaud you and your department on what you guys have recently done in the country club, cleaning that up. I know that was a big chaff. So thank you very much. A few weeks ago, Amanda came to you guys and I was voted in to get on your Board of Adjusters. And one thing that I noticed on there is that the only meeting was in February of this year. And I was just wondering, how can that be when there's so much building going on? And I know adjusters are for variances and things of that nature. And I know that even in the country club where there's so much building going on with residentials and stuff, people's sides of their houses, maybe they want to put a little bit wider on there. There may be an easement there. Maybe they want to go over setbacks, things of this nature. Why there wasn't more requests or applications, if you will, for variances. And one thing I noticed is there's a fee of $1,200. Why? That was the one thing. The other one that I wanted to mention is the direction that this city is being rebuilt. And I've been in Bay County since '79. I've seen a lot of things come and go, a lot of proposals that should have been, and some that were turned down that, well, I believe that they could have been great. Love the track you guys are going on. I think that everything that you guys are proposing as far as rebuilding is spot on, and it's going to make the city a better city. So that's all I
I
have.
appreciate those comments and share some of those sentiments with you. Had actually brought some of those up when I first became mayor, especially that fee. So perhaps you could contact the city manager. Maybe we could even think about putting that on an agenda, talk about usually the Board of Adjustments meets on an as-needed basis because there's no need just to meet if there's, but maybe there's some discussion that could be had there and we could put that on an agenda. So thank you for bringing that forward. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak this morning? I missed anyone? Thank you very much. Then that will conclude our item number 7. We'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items, the minutes from the regular meeting and the special meeting that were held, and then also the approval of 5 Hurricane Michael Relief Fund grants. I'd just like to speak to those for just a moment and then ask for a motion for approval. We have approximately $6,000 and change left in our Hurricane Relief Fund. I would like to point out that Lynn Haven has given out well over $200,000 to our community. This was funding that was raised through this relief fund from the public and from corporate donations. We're very happy to say that we've given out basically $250,000 in $1,000 grants to help people here in the city. We would like to take $5,000 more out, leaving us a balance of $1,000 and change in that Hurricane Relief Fund, just so we keep a balance there. And then hopefully, by going ahead and giving, we had been advised at some point to maybe keep around $5,000 in the account. But I did speak with our consultant who helped me with the Hurricane Relief Fund when we set it up, and said as long as we have, some type of a balance there, maybe over $1,000, that we'd be okay. So. We've allowed the city staff to look at the list of applicants. We've still got almost, I think about 1,200 applicants left who originally applied, so we're going to approve 5 more families to receive $1,000 each to help them as they continue in their recovery from Hurricane Michael. And I hope, as I'm speaking this morning, that this will spur on maybe some corporate people outside of this area, maybe some local people who would like to give more money to this fund, because I assure you it has done such wonderful things for families here in the city of Lynn Haven. So those are the 2 items. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion of these items from the board? Any from the public? There is none. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
I want to get the second. Who's second?
I did.
Okay. Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and congratulations to the 5 families who will be receiving those $1,000 grants. There is no old business. The new business, item number 10, discussion and possible approval of the transmittal of resolution number 2020-06-330, amending the capital improvements element of the comprehensive plan. Mr. Albritton, do we need to read the resolution?
Yes, ma'am, at the appropriate time, but this, at this point, is a public hearing, so if you'd open it with a time and announcement of the public hearing, Mayor.
Okay. So this public hearing is now beginning, and the time is 9:25.
Thank you, Mayor. Florida's local governments are required to have a capital improvements element as a critical component of their comprehensive plan. Within the capital improvements element is the schedule of capital improvements for certain capital projects to achieve and maintain the adopted level of service standards for public facilities that are necessary to implement the comprehensive plan. Thereby, it's a statutory requirement. The city is required to update the schedule of capital improvements periodically. The schedule that is currently in the comprehensive plan is an old one. It dates back to 2010. So if anybody pulls up, if any citizens pull up the comp plan online, they're going to see that old schedule. Now, there is no longer a requirement to send the updated schedule to the state. There used to be, but there isn't a requirement anymore. However, all text amendments to the comprehensive plan do have to go through this expedited state procedure. And because the one is so old that's in the plan, I thought it would be a good idea to update the comprehensive plan for people that, refer to our website and want to see what the schedule is. So in order to do that, we have to transmit it to the state so that we can change the text in the comprehensive plan. And the city contracted, it was... last year, the year before, contracted with Panhandle Engineering to actually look at our facilities and see what projects were required within the city. And Chris Forehand was the one that actually put the schedule together. So any specific questions regarding projects, if you could refer to Chris Forehand, please.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion or a discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is,
To approve.
thank you, and the second. Is there any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Item number
Mayor,
11,
if we could read the resolution title.
I apologize.
No problem.
Do we need to have another vote or just read it? Okay, thank you.
A resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, authorizing transmittal to appropriate agencies amendments to the comprehensive plan to update the capital improvement element as required by Section 163.3177 Florida statutes.
Thank you. We good?
Yes, ma'am, and close out this public hearing, and then we'll open another for...
The public
next-
hearing is now over, and the time is 9:27.
And the next item is a public hearing as well, Mayor.
This public hearing is a discussion and possible approval of Resolution 2020-06-331 regarding the FDEP State Revolving Fund adoption of the wastewater facility plan improvements. The time is 9:28, and this public hearing is now open. This is a report from Mr. Chris Forehand of Panhandle Engineering.
Morning, Mayor and
Good morning.
Commissioners. I'm Chris Forehand with Panhandle Engineering. Also have Amir Zafar, who is with Mott McDonald. We basically work together to start this first process of expanding your wastewater treatment facility. What you have before you is a resolution that allows us to submit this planning document to the State Revolving Fund Loan Program with DEP in the state of Florida. They do have some, as you know, they've had loan money in the past, but this year we think they're going to have some grant funds. It's called Resiliency Funding. We don't know exactly how much that'll be, but if it is approved by the legislature and the governor doesn't veto it, we think it'll be substantial, and a substantial amount of the amount that we have estimated for this first round of improvements. This facilities plan includes the improvements to basically add a new headworks and to also add a new master lift station to the wastewater plant. We did provide you with a one-page kind of a summary with some photos of the plan of that document, and I've got some extra copies if folks in the audience want some. Also gave Ms. Vicky a copy of the plan. In addition to that, it's also on the website if anybody wants to download that. I've got Amir here. I'm just going to kind of let him talk about some of the technical aspects of the planning document. And then when he's finished, we'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. What you have in front of you is, the report, which is comprehensive. It provides several different options, and we selected an option for the improvement. This is one of the first improvements. So anytime you do work at the treatment plant, you start from the front of the plant. So the headworks is the first treatment process, which removes solids and sand. So that will be the first project of the several that you will have to do to give the city's growth potential and to provide more wastewater service. We went through a full iteration of how we come up with these solutions, and we met with the city staff on the equipment selection, and we worked with several wastewater treatment facilities, vendors, and we do a lot of design around that area and in Florida, so we use our expertise to come up with the best and most financially feasible solution. In a nutshell, what headworks and pump station, everybody knows it takes the sewer from one point to the other. What a headworks is it removes all the solids, it's the first line of defense of anything which is thrown into your sewer system. So it removes all the rags, all the debris, and it will remove the sand from your wastewater treatment facility sewer, and it protects all the equipment downstream of it. It will be sized to accommodate your future growth well into the future. So there's a portion of the report which projects our flows up till 40, and it will meet those requirements. With that, I will answer any specific questions from the commission and from the public.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Is the resiliency grant funding separate from the clean water SRF funds? Are those two different funding sources, or are they tied together?
Well, they are tied together. It comes out of the same funding source, out of SRF.
So if we are approved for the SRF funds for clean water, would that help to move us forward for the resiliency grant as well?
It would be simultaneous.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
What it is, it's actually EPA has sent the money out for the communities affected by Hurricane Michael, so that's the fund set aside. The state legislator have to have some matching funds. It's in the budget, but budget is not signed, so that's where the issue is.
Thank you. Other questions from the commission? Are there any questions from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Yvonne Bishop again, 1225 Dundee Lane. I would just like to know, where would it be located?
Where would it be located?
This facility?
This is an improvement to existing.
Right. I just didn't know where that facility, if there is a pre-plan to be, that's all.
Go ahead, Chris.
It is located at the wastewater treatment facility at the end of 5th Street.
Are you familiar with Kensall
Kensall
Park and the wastewater? Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, Chris. Mrs. Walker?
Is that a proposal that you have in front of you available to the citizens? Because it was not on
You
the website.
may have my copy. And it's also online with Panhandle Engineering that you can access there as well. It's online at the Panhandle Engineering.
I did read the 99-page one that was online. I did not see this one online, but I will check when I go home.
Thank you.
I could not find that.
It's the same thing. That's what's, yeah, this is the executive.
Okay,
summary.
if we could have order. Thank you. All right. Are there other questions from the commission? Is there a motion? We need to read the resolution now?
That would be appropriate.
Thank you. Mrs. Gaynor, please.
A resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, relating to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, FDEP, State Revolving Fund, SRF, adoption of the wastewater facility plan for the implementation of headworks and master lift station improvements, effective this date.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's been a second. Any further discussion? Any from the public? Mrs. Walker, since I've already allowed you, one more question. Go ahead. Please make it quick.
And he might have answered In the 99-page report that I read, there were 3 options of expenditures for the updating of this. The option 1 was 0, the option 2 was 6.7 million, and option 3 was 55 million. Huge difference between 6.7 and 55. But I see on here that it says, based on the evaluation, the selected option is for the city to upgrade its existing treatment facility. Did the commission agree on the second option, or did you give it to the selection of the option, did you give it to the city engineer to do the 6.7 and not the 55 million?
Mrs. Walker, this particular item on the agenda, if you look, is possible approval of the resolution regarding the FDEP State Revolving Fund adoption of the wastewater facility plan.
Correct.
And I will defer to Mr. Albritton and to Mr. Forehand, and possibly they can answer your question, but there's not been an approval as such because we haven't received the funds, if I'm correct. So if you would, and your time is really up at this point, and so I will let Mr. Albritton try to answer your question. Thank you. And you're welcome to come and speak further about this with staff if you still have questions at the end of the meeting. Go ahead.
So I'll try to answer her question. She was asking about the 2 different options. The reason we chose or we recommended to go with the $6.7 million option was because the $50 million option was to send your wastewater to another treatment plant in the county. Obviously, it was a lot cheaper, so we thought it'd be best to just upgrade your plant.
Thank you so much. I hope that answered all the questions. Anything else from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
I kind of have a question, but
I will allow it.
I just want to make sure I understand also the 6.7. Is there any more voting on that when we get down to it, or is that what we're approving right now
There are no funds being spent today at this time.
at this time?
No.
But will it come back before us before there are funds spent?
It certainly should. It certainly should.
It will.
It will. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Construction projects over 300,000 must be bid out, and the commission's got to give some sort of approval before the bidding process.
Thank you.
Because there's a great deal of context difference in should and will. So we're at, that was your issue. Okay. Mrs. Gaynor, would you please start over with the roll? Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Sorry.
That's all right. Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so it stands approved. I would caution the commission in the future that if you have an additional question, to ask that question before we begin calling the roll. Thank you so much. Moving on to item number
You will
13.
close out the public hearing, Mayor.
And I will remember to close out the public hearings. It is 9:37, and the public hearing is now closed. Thank you, Mr. Albritton. Moving on to item number 13. This is not a public hearing, correct? Thank you. We've moved on. Discussion and possible approval to request that Bay County place a traffic light at the entrance of Andrews Plantation. Commissioner Russell, please go ahead. Did I miss 12?
12, yes.
Sorry. Item number 12, discussion and possible approval of verbiage for the 4th plaque to be placed on the Grand Soldiers Monument at the Memorial Park. This is over on Georgia and 9th. Mr. Richard Walker, at some point in months past, in all of the storm and all the other things going on, had come before the commission and asked that we approve another plaque and that the city would pay for it to go on that monument. And it was my understanding that we had approved it, but when we went back and looked, I think it was just a discussion that we were going to have. So, Mr. Walker, if you would very briefly just bring the commission back to what you had asked for, and then we will ask the commission to approve that we go ahead with the plaque. And I do apologize because it was my understanding that we had approved it much earlier. So please go ahead.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Thank you, and it's no problem. It's just we tried to close the loop on this.
Yep, go ahead and let us know what the plaque's going
I
to say.
didn't want to upset anybody. We have proposed, the Heritage Society proposed to put the 4th plaque. The 4th plaque was originated in 1911, 1920 to be put there. It never was put there, never made, and it was forgotten. The plaque would be what they call the work.
Okay.
Who was involved in getting the statue there, doing everything connected with the statue. My proposal was not for the city to pay for it. It's already paid for.
Okay.
So that's taken care of. What we need is you approve it. It's a policy thing dealing with the park to be putting the
Thank you.
fourth and final plaque up there. The plaque is there. I gave you the verbiage. This plaque is a little bit bigger than the other three that are up there, but that's because the work is so detailed.
Thank you.
That's the plaque, and that's what the subject matter is, and all you need to do, and one other request is if you want to dedicate it and do a dedication, that's your schedule.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you very much. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval of this plaque. Is there any further discussion from the commission? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and Mrs. Gaynor, if you would have staff maybe find an appropriate date for the dedication and then contact the commissioners and find a date that they can all be present if they'd like to. Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 13, discussion and possible approval to request that Bay County place a traffic light at the entrance of Andrews Plantation, and this is Commissioner Russell's item. Please go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I apologize to the commission, but I think I asked for this to be put on the agenda prematurely.
Okay.
And would ask that this be tabled until the commission makes the approval or for Andrew's Plantation
Okay.
too.
Would you
So
place that in the form of a motion, sir?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion that we put this on the agenda for the same commission meeting that we will discuss Andrew's Plantation too.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, please call the roll.
Commissioner Russell,
I was going to ask, does that also apply to the next agenda item, the speed limit?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Commissioner Russell.
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, it's approved. Moving on to item number 14. This is discussion and possible approval to request that Bay County lower the speed limit from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour on Highway 389 within the city limits. Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. As many of y'all were aware, as I mentioned in the workshop, I had a meeting with the county to discuss the issues with traffic on Highway 389. At that time, I discussed four-laning 389, and they didn't seem like that was an appropriate response to the problems. So then I discussed reducing the speed limit. They informed me at that time that it would have to be an official request from the city for them to consider it. I want to let you know that after that initial meeting, I came away from that meeting thinking that the county was not very responsive to my questions. I have since had several conversations with them and actually have an email from them where they are much more interested in trying to correct those problems. And to that end, they have already started a traffic study to determine whether it's necessary to reduce that speed limit. So based on their actions, I think that item 14 is probably a moot point for the city to consider at the moment, ma'am.
Okay, any further discussion? So no action on this, no motions, no anything. All right. Moving on to item number 15. Discussion and possible approval for the city to look into the feasibility of connecting 24th Street to 26th Street via the railroad track property. Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. This was obviously something that I'd been thinking about because of the issues with traffic that have been brought about through the discussions with Andrews Plantation too. Let's see, this one's about, yes, okay. Trying to find a separate entrance for Mowat Highlands to access their property to alleviate some of the problems with Highway 389. The traffic engineers at the county do believe that if we can give Mowat Highlands a separate way to access their property, that it will reduce the speed or the traffic on 389. To that end, I've looked at several different options, but I think it's best for the commission to consider allowing or asking the city engineers to look at the feasibility of doing it and projected cost and bring it back before us to see if it's something that the commission would consider doing. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we direct the city manager to ask the engineers to do a feasibility study on the possibility of connecting 24th Street to 26th Street via the railroad tracks.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the commission?
Yes, Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Commissioner
I had
Aldridge.
Just a question about this, Commissioner Russell. Do we know, I know most of the railroad track property was slated for rails to trails by the state. Is this not part of that trail, or are we looking at removing part of the trail? Or I know it's part of the master design also to have that trail kind of running through our community eventually. I just want to kind of know if we've crossed that bridge yet.
Mayor, if I may answer.
Go ahead, Commissioner Russell.
I have had several discussions with the city engineer, and it is possible that we can run that road down the side of the rails to trails. The rails to trails would still have the area to have both. There are two different directions we can take. You can take 24th Street up to the rails to trails, but to do that, we would have to acquire some property. If we come down Kirkwell Street off of 24th Street, there's a dedicated county easement, so there'd be no property that would have to be acquired. That would take us straight to the rails to trails, and then we could access the rails to trails to 26th Street that way. Unfortunately, my original goal was to take 24th Street all the way through and connect to 24th Street, but there is, like Forehand said, there is a conservation property there that the county has told me is about impossible to go through.
Sure.
So this, I think, is the only other viable option we've got.
Okay.
So I
Thank
hope
you.
that answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or questions? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Parno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, stands approved. Moving to item number 17, pardon me. This is the discussion regarding the city rebuild process and parameters. Pardon me just a moment.
Mayor, you jumped 16.
Thank you. I need to start wearing my reading glasses, apparently. Item number 16, discussion and possible approval to add personnel policy number 156 to the personnel policy manual. This is the city manager. Mrs. Gaynor, go ahead, please.
Mayor, I'm going to ask that our Human Resources Director, Kayla Battistini, come up front.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So in April of 2018, we adopted a new personnel policy that the commission approved under the direction of our previous city manager. And prior to that policy, there was always an attendance and punctuality policy, and it was omitted from the policy that was presented back in 2018. So we just wanted to help some employees just decipher the difference between an occurrence or an absence, or give them the provisions of how this policy works so that they can make better decisions and understand how the policy works. So it's just basically bringing the policy into current business practices. For example, if somebody does not come to work and does not call for 3 days in a row, normal standard business practice is that's job abandonment, no call, no show, 3 days. So those are some of the things that are not included now in our policy, in the work rules policy. So we just wanted to add this because we had it before and we just wanted to put it back in for them.
Thank you for that clarification. Does the commission have any questions for our HR representative? Okay, thank you so much. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I was only aware of this morning, so I have a question as to whether item L, which says that if an employee calls out of work the day before, the day of, or the day after a holiday, the manager will review the circumstances of the absence. I was just wondering, is that new or is that already in there? Because if there's any new language in here, it's not identified as being new, so I don't know if that's new or not. And if it is new, I have a question, but if it isn't, then.
Okay. Ms. Battistini?
It was in the old policy, but it's not in this 2018 policy. So what that means is if you have pre-approved someone for leave around a holiday, they still get paid for it. It's if they call out when you already have 7 people scheduled off, and then, the person that you were depending on to run the lift station or the water operators, then that's when you look at it and discuss it.
So I know that some employees are a little bit worried because of, let's take July the 4th. July the 4th used to be a holiday, a staff holiday, except for people that worked maybe in community services, you know, parks and recreation. But last year, staff were required to work July 4th. Actually, I know there was one year, it used to be on a voluntary basis, like somebody had suggested. I think it was you, Commissioner Tinder. So the concern is, let's say if we had had the parade this July the 4th, if employees were required to work July the 4th, so if employees were required to work a holiday, then does it still stay under employee benefits that July the 4th is a holiday for employees? Because if so, that would have to be changed in the personnel policy manual also, and could not be advertised as being an employee benefit, as an employee holiday.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Ms. Battistini, did you have a comment to that or not? You don't have to make one, I'm just asking.
I would just defer to the city manager because, you know, if it's mandatory, that would be her choice.
Okay?
And normally we have a day that makes up for that July 4th date. I think last year everyone was given the day after the July 4th, and some people did not work because they had already scheduled vacations and they were not here, but they still got that day off. And so when July 4th falls on a weekend, like it will, we will be off Friday, so everyone should be off Friday. And then Saturday, those very minimum employees in terms of fireworks will be working, taking in consideration some of the things that Commissioner Tender asked us to do for those employees.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? Any from the commission? Ms.
Yes, my red light's going off, and
Okay,
I'm
go
not
ahead.
sure why.
Okay, go ahead.
We talked about, or I had suggested that if they have to work on the holiday, that employees are paid double time.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something you're going to implement?
Yes, and it's going to be just a few for this fireworks time. This was for this particular one this year.
Okay. Is there any way that, and I hate to make a big deal out of this, but is there any way that we could see a copy or have Kelly create a copy of the changes? Because is that the only change that we see? I mean, or is that the only one that you found?
I'll defer to Ms.
Amanda?
Battistini to answer
Yes.
that question.
Yes.
There really aren't any other changes. It's just, that was actually in part of the old policy, where it was, if you called out the day before, the day after a holiday, you weren't paid for it unless it was pre-approved.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Oh, when you say old policy, do you mean the
The
one that
one
Mr.
before
White
20
created in 2018?
Before that.
Oh,
yes,
before that.
Before that,
Yes.
yes.
Wow.
This
Okay.
is the one that they've
This, in
been,
2018, this part was missing in
Gotcha.
the one he created. And that's why we've been going through, city manager and I have been going through every policy and just trying to get them to where they really fit the city as opposed to fitting another business.
Thank you. Are there further questions, Commissioner Tender?
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Any from the public? Mrs. Gaynor, please call the roll.
I'm sorry. Did we get a first and a second?
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Gaynor, please call the roll.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Parno,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson, Commissioner Tender, excuse me,
No.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Motion stands approved. Moving to item number 17, the last item on today's agenda. This is a discussion regarding the city rebuild process and the parameters surrounding it. We had a rather extensive workshop the other day. We had several ideas to come about. And I just wanted to once again state that we did have a local contractor from Phoenix Construction several weeks ago, which sort of precipitated our discussion to bring forward a proposal for a design build of the city facilities. And just in brief, what his proposal stated was that he could including 5 acres of property over behind the Walgreens store, which he has purchased, build a police station, an EOC with a great deal of property left over, that he could build a new library adjacent to the Senior Citizen Center, that he could demolish the old library and either demolish or harden up for future renovation the old City Hall, and offered a guaranteed maximum price of $15,800,000, while the city has approximately $20 million to rebuild. The architects brought forward their presentations, which together for the sports complex and the city rebuild totaled approximately $40 million and some change for those projects. And so in light of the glaring difference in prices, and that we could have a guaranteed maximum price plus even some financing from that proposal, while it's not, it would not have been procedurally correct for the commission to just say, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to do this. What we did talk about was a solicitation that the staff could come up with for some alternatives for the city from other design build type contractual services, similar to what the school board is doing with several of their buildings with those guaranteed maximum prices. Plus, it looks like a faster rebuild, and we're now almost at 2 years and really haven't started anything. So those were my comments at the last, at the workshop. I just wanted to kind of summarize what I said to the commission, that I hoped you would be willing to look at something different, possibly in that direction, and to get things moving. And we also talked about the priority of what should be constructed first. And it is my feeling as mayor, I mean, every municipal building we had has been destroyed. I want to give kudos to the staff for what they've done to the garden center, that we've saved so much money, what we've done to the senior citizen center, we've saved so much money. And it's just time to get started. And so I think that that's a good direction to go in. I think that we should prioritize, we need to get that police station done and harden that up, because in light of the current situation, the environment in this country right now, our police officers and our other first responders deserve a hardened facility where they can take care of this city. We also need our city hall rebuilt as soon as possible, because we're leasing these buildings. That's, as far as I'm concerned, when you're leasing something, that's money just being kind of flushed away. We need to move on. And then with the savings in a design build type construction that we would have on these facilities, then we would really have a lot of money left that we could go forward with our gymnasium and our sports complex for our children. So those are my feelings, and I will open the floor to any other discussion and possible motions.
Mayor, if I may.
Please go ahead, Commissioner Tender.
To me, the common sense, it just makes common sense to go with the design build and the guaranteed price. When it was first mentioned, I was kind of excited to actually relocate part of that over there. I guess I'd like to make a motion that we get started with the police department and take Mr. Finch up on.
Well, let me clarify what I was saying. You can't, Mr. Finch is the one who brought forward a proposal that started the discussion of a design build.
Right.
While it's possible that Mr. Finch and Phoenix might want to enter into the solicitation of these proposals and maybe project what they did or something different, this would be open to any contracting firm to
Okay.
as what we're asking, what I
bid.
was asking is that maybe the commission would enter into a discussion to allow staff to solicit proposals from anyone who would like to come forward with a design build type proposal. I just wanted to clarify that again. Thank you.
Yeah, get bids, obviously. I'm big on bids, but so yes, that would be my recommendation, to see what's out there and see what kind of things come back on a design build.
Thank you, Commissioner Tender. Are there other feelings about this or other ideas of how we should proceed?
Mayor, if I could speak to it,
Go ahead, Commissioner Aldridge.
Thank you. We're all in the same boat, I think. We all want to start seeing buildings being constructed. We're all tired of being in modular buildings, and I understand that 110%. We also all know each other. We all do business together on a very common basis. When I say us, I mean the city and every contractor that's local, to be honest with you. I'm always for looking at if we can save money, so I'm only one vote. I do lean towards design, bid, build. I still lean towards that direction. It's nothing against anyone or anything personal. It's just, that's just me. I'm one vote. And I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to talk about it all day long. It's not the time for that. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I don't know if I misunderstood or I just didn't understand what you said. Did you say you are for design, bid, build, or did you say design, build? I'm sorry.
Design, bid, build. Yeah, as we had the process before. Now, I'm not opposed to looking at other things. I'm
Thank you.
not.
Okay, I just didn't understand what you
Yes,
said.
ma'am.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Anyone else? I guess what I'm asking the commission to do is that the staff needs direction so that we can go forward with the rebuild of the city. So we need a motion on the floor to do something.
I apologize, Mayor. I thought I had made a motion.
Okay.
That we look into this and allow staff to get some bids going for design build.
And I'm not sure that, correct me, Mr. Albritton, if we're soliciting for design build proposals, would bid be the proper word for the motion? Could you assist Commissioner Tender with the proper wording for what she's trying to make a motion for?
Generally speaking, it's a bid or solicitation. So, I think the motion is sufficient for understanding in general layman's terms.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make sure we have.
I believe
But-
it just gets us started,
But
at least.
Mayor, if we go that route, pursuant to the CCNA statutes, we would also need to retain our own advisory architect engineer. That's what the statute says. I looked at it not too long ago when this was
Okay.
brought up. So, if the commission wants to move away from the process that was started now, I would like the motion to contain leeway for city staff to be able to research and provide a proposal to solicit the way the commission may vote here momentarily.
Okay. Commissioner Tender, could you assist Commissioner Tender in the wording of that motion, please, Mr. Albritton?
Yeah, I just think that the motion was to direct staff to provide to research and provide a plan to pursue a design bid build of whatever portions of the city of Lynn Haven or the entire thing.
I just wanted to get started with the police department and that portion. And then we could continue on from there. And also wanted to include staff looking into our own hiring an architect just for that project.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? I'm trying to remember in Robert's rules, I believe we have to have a second before we can ask for further discussion is correct. So is there a second to the motion?
May I speak again?
Yes, Commissioner Tender.
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to ask Commissioner Aldridge, I was under the impression you just said that you would be in favor to look into design build.
That was
that-
the clarification I asked him for, and he was in favor of continuing with what we've already started.
Okay.
Now, if I may clarify, Mayor, on
Please
my
go ahead.
statement, yes, the point I was making is I was one vote. If this commission decides to go another way, it was not, I'll go with you guys. I'll go with it if that's the case. But that's
So if we continue on, I guess if we continue on the way we are with the companies that we've already dealt with, we have no way, except for one unofficial bid that's been presented, to know if we are overspending or if we could save money.
Mayor,
and-
could I at least address the process? There seems to be some confusion with the process we're on. To clarify that.
Yes, you may.
quickly.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. The city of Lynn Haven decided to submit, and pursuant to the CCNA, and for certain professionals, you can't ask for low bids, but they decided to solicit for professional architect engineer teams. Ultimately, there were 3 selected, and that was divided up. The scope of labor is divided up over 3. Their job is to provide a plan and a recommended or a developed cost, estimated cost. Thereafter, at some point, if the commission were to go forward with them and say they approve of a plan, let's say for City Hall, at X dollars, then that firm, the architect and engineer firm, would thereafter submit bids for the work. And there's multiple variations of how those bidding process could go. And that's the chart we're on now. My understanding is what Mayor Anderson is suggesting is that she does not think that process is meeting her expectations, and she would like to look at, have staff develop another plan for an alternative bid process. And I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's a fair
You did
summation.
pretty well.
So either way, there's going to be bidding for all construction, just depending on how the city wants to do it.
And so Commissioner Tender has made a motion, and there's obviously not a second. So I know there are people in the audience who would like to speak to this. I know there are several contractors here. I think they have items that they would like to bring up possibly to the commission. I would ask you, I know that I can pass the gavel and make a motion. Is it possible for the mayor to pass the gavel and second a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'd like to pass the gavel to the Mayor Pro Tem, who is Commissioner Russell. And at this point, I would like to second Commissioner Tender's proposal for the sake of discussion of this commission and for transparency for the public to see that this commission tends to think we're on the right track with a $40 million proposal from an architectural fund with no guaranteed maximum price. So I've passed the gavel. I said I would never do that again as mayor because there's been some absolute terrible things happen when I've done that, but I have done that. And so at this point, is there any discussion from the commission? Would anyone like to say why they think that we're on the right track with a proposal from 3 different architectural firms that will cost this city $40 million that we don't have?
Now that there's a motion and a second, is any more discussion with the commission? And I'd like to open up for public comment. Yes, sir, Mr. Finch.
James Finch, I'm the one that brought this up. When I seen that the architects had $4 million worth of fees to do what y'all wanted in a $40 million project, and I said, well, this is way out of hand. What I proposed was a design build concept, in finance or whatever, but you can advertise for design build firms, and you select the firm you want to talk to. You rank them 1, 2, and 3. So you get with the first firm. He has to pay his own architect fees. He has to do everything. The city's out not 1/4. So if I was selected, I would come in and sit down with the city, go through the plans. I would do 20% plans up to 60% plans and say, okay, this is what you want. This is how many square feet you want. This is how many offices, right then. Then I would give you a guaranteed maximum price. And if you were at the thought of going with that proposal, you would hire me. If not, you would go to the second one and you would do the same thing. Now, the city's not out a dime. So if you go with these architects, you go and they're going to want several $100,000 to design all this stuff, and you can go bid. Y'all have got these trailers for 3 years. 2 years of it is fixing to be up. So you're not going to be finished in a year, so you're going to have to rent these again, and nothing's getting done. This proposal fast tracks your construction. It's the way the school board does it, because they have to open a school in 1 year, so they ain't got time for all this. But they hire the architects, and I always thought that was wrong. 1,000 schools, 1,000 different architect fees. 2,000 schools, 2,000 fees. Why don't they, I always said if the county was right, they would pick 3 grammar school proposals, 3 junior highs, and put them in the right perspective, but all the fees would be paid for forever. And the fastest way to do it, and like I say, the school board, what we presented to y'all last time was what the school board does, and it was, the statute was in there. You asked, was it legal? Yes, it's legal. Several ways to be legal. This is the fastest way, but you'll be negotiating the rent on this next year because you're not going to be finished. So I don't know how many more years. Y'all pay about $20,000 a month for this stuff right here. That's a lot of money.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Mr. White?
Mayor, I don't mean to cut you off, but you have passed the gavel, so that would be a.
I am so sorry, I just forgot out of habit. Mayor Pro Tem, please handle this.
No problem, Mayor.
I will be quiet.
Mr. White?
Just call me Derwin. I'm Derwin White, 4116 North Highway 231. I represent, GAC contractors as part owner. We've been involved in a lot of different concepts of construction. The most expeditious is design build. I know there's a lot of different moving components with this as far as location of land and other, opportunities that you may have to overcome by making that selection. But typically, it's based on a points system. It's not very complicated. You can get with, or we can provide you with documentation to show you multiple types of design build approaches with other, whether it's Bay District schools, whether it's courthouses, so forth, so on. But the key element is he has an advisory board like he's talking about. We've never used an architectural advisory board, but it's always been an advisory board that looks over the plans for the city that makes sure that we're designing exactly what you want. Exact amount of square footage, office space, so forth, so on. The cost of business is typically, if you give any architect the flexibility to design you something, a lot of times they design you what they think they want. In design build concept, we design you what we know you want. And we get the architect on board that will do that to help save money. The expeditious process is through permitting because we start multiple things as far as from a site work perspective, whichever engineer, the contractor's typically in control of it. But based on what council lady, Tender is talking about, I don't want them to be confused about design bid build. That's just a low bid process. There's change orders, there's all sorts of things. In design build, I eat the change order. We're doing a design build horizontal. If you look at Jinx Avenue, if we miss unsuitable material, we pay for it. We're acting as the owner, so I think it's basically what happens in this whole approach. I think it's the best approach if you're looking to accelerate and get in buildings quick. I think it's the most efficient approach. And I feel like if you're looking out for the best interest of the taxpayers' dollars, that's the direction you'll take. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment from the public? Let me just.
So is there any other yes, sir.
Brian Dick, 3217 Country Club. I'm in the construction industry. We build houses. There is not a ability to do a finite dollar amount on any project. You're going to have change orders. Just a simple example. You have the police station over there. You want to cut costs as big as possible, even more energy efficient. Somebody puts in halogen. Lo and behold, you want to change it to LED. There's a cost. Who's going to pay for the cost above whatever you guys decide, whether it's 15 million, 18 million, 25 million? If it goes over that, who's paying for that? Is it going to be us? Is it going to be the taxpayers, or who's going to pay for that? I love the direction you guys are going on. I think it should be staying that way. But anybody who tells you that they can give you a finite dollar amount, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir, Mr. Finch.
I've been doing this 50-something years. A guaranteed maximum price is a guaranteed maximum price. You sit down with the city and you got the light bulbs figured out, you got everything figured out before you get started with a guaranteed maximum price. There's no change orders unless you want to add a room to it or you want to go another story. There's nothing. The plans that you sign and that we sign will be at a guaranteed maximum price.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. White.
I'm not here to contradict anything, but we do a lot of GMP work, and I think what you'll find is guaranteed maximum pricing. Anything above that comes out of the contractor's pocket. If you change your mind after the fact and it's designed and say, okay, I don't like this, there's a possibility that there would be internal change order. We've had the last 3 GMPs, and I can show you where we give money back to the owner. Basically go through, refine the bid process, keep refining the bid process till we get the numbers that are readily suitable for that particular application of the project. So where we're going to disagree is I can give you 3 examples of GMPs that we started. We didn't exceed that guaranteed maximum price.
Any other discussion?
Mayor Pro Temp, if I may, can I ask a question to Mr. Forehand over there? Because we were bouncing around the last workshop what we thought the best way to put this out was. So I'd like to kind of pick your brain a little bit and what you think.
Well, I can say there's definitely advantages to design build. You know,
Microphone.
I'm sorry. There's definitely advantages to design build because you can, and what they were talking about was you have the architect, the engineer, and the contractor all on the same team, and you select them based on their qualifications. And then you can sit down with them and you can, they can give you a price for the design, just like the architects can give you a price for their design. And they bring those plans to 60%. And then the city reviews those plans and they approve them. Then the contractor goes back and he gives you a not to exceed guaranteed maximum price for that job. You don't pay any more money unless, like they said, you make a change, you add a story or you add another room or you decide to change something that was on the plans that you approved. So it's a delivery method that Bay District Schools has used, Bay County has used, City of Lynn Haven has used. But I think the only issue there was FEMA funding. So you need your consultant that you have hired to tell you whether or not you can use that FEMA funding. That all depends on what you get from your insurance. It depends on whatever's left. That's what FEMA would fund. So you just have to address all those issues and make a decision based on, you know, whatever your funding that's available.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, ma'am.
and we have talked to our consultants about design build. And when we tried design build before, as you know, FEMA would not give us a firm answer whether or not we would receive that money that's out there for the sports complex. For the PD, there is $1.8 million that's out there. That's a hard number that will be for the PD. There's no guarantee that we will receive that money if we go towards design build.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I speak?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Another thing that we brought up during the workshop, however, was that we have approximately $10 million with our insurance funds right now, and we will be, hopefully, after some more negotiation, receiving more insurance funds. Insurance money is not subject to any FEMA regulations, and so there's that much available. And also, we've already, to have FEMA funds, you have been reimbursed for something that you've already paid for. So the funds that are available, we have available for, you can shift those projects around, you can shift money, and FEMA has never said no to design build. I've sat at the table with FEMA since the very beginning. The Tetra Tech consultants made comments that FEMA doesn't like it. There are some issues with FEMA. I will say that they don't sometimes like design build because it doesn't follow their handbook with 78 pages of acronyms. But a lot of the FEMA consultants that we've had with Lynn Haven have not really been on top of their game. I'll just say that. One of them in particular was let go. And I won't even go into those parameters. But the FEMA consultants that we have all given us different answers. But the bottom line is that a great deal of, about half of the money that we have right now in our coffers are from insurance money, and there are no restrictions on that money. And we could start somewhere with that. That's my comment. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Temp,
Yeah.
can I ask another question? If we switched and went to design build, what do we have out with the present architects? Aren't they're going to present us with a bill, correct?
This is correct.
Do we know what that is?
No, I do not.
Ballpark? Anybody? Chris?
All that we've done, and we've been working on the sports park, and all that we've done to date is just some preliminary planning. So it's very minimal.
I think he's talking about the PD
Yes,
and
the-
Chambers and.
Well, I'm talking about the team that I'm
You
on for the
guys are
sports
on,
park
yes,
with DAG.
yes.
I don't know anything about City Hall or the police station.
So may I ask another question, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Mayor.
So staff has been working with architects that the commission approved without asking them what they're charging. Is that the question I'd like to know?
We have some projected numbers. I think that was given to the commission probably about the couple of last 3 meetings. All the commission has some projections, but he was asking, I think in terms of if we were to let them go, how much would that be?
I understood the question. I got it.
Just like to know what we'd have to pay out to switch to a design build.
Pro Tem, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner.
I thought the numbers were a little over $1 million already that we owe these folks that drew those pictures for us.
No, ma'am, those were just the projections if they were to go on and bill. We'll have to go back and get the work they've done, and then they'll bill us for that. But they gave you some projections if they were to bill.
The whole thing.
Yes, ma'am.
But
I think that was in your packet.
Is
Yes,
this?
Mayor.
I'm
Mayor Pro
sorry.
Tem?
Yes, Mayor.
My question is the same as Commissioner Perno's, though. I cannot imagine that the buyout would be anywhere close to $1 million for drawings that have been done on a computer. So,
Yes, Commissioner.
No, ma'am.
That was more or less, I figured they've presented us with pictures off of a computer. How much could it cost?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, I think when we spoke with Florida Architects a week or so ago, it was based on a percentage, and they actually had not had that number themselves,
That's true.
they say. Now, who knows, but that's what they were saying.
I completely understand that architects work on a percentage, but again, back to Commissioner Perno and I's question, we were just trying to make a point, I think, that while the 1 million number would be something that would happen later on, right now, we're at a point, in my opinion, where we could get out of this $40 million ship we're sailing on and go on a different course. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, City Manager, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender?
Are we voting?
On your motion.
Oh, okay, thank you. Lost track. Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
I'm not the mayor. Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge? No. Commissioner Russell?
No. Motion passes. So, okay, I relinquish the gavel.
And with that, Mayor, just so we're all clear, staff.
Go ahead, Mr.
will
Albritton.
work on a plan and proposal to bid out the portion of the city work through the design build process. Whatever that may entail, we'll bring it back to the commission so we have a full, clear plan.
Is all the commission clear on what Mr. Albritton said and staff? I am very pleased with that decision. I think it was a good decision. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.